period, we would defer to experts, we would defer to specialists, and a whole defense establishment to tell us how things are going. But today, we ourselves, and in our judgments about our families, about what sorts of degrees we should pursue, about how we should organize our careers, are very much influenced by the concept of economic competitiveness. When we joke about a job or a career that maybe isn't as of relatively little value, what might be behind it, and pay attention to when you do this, is what's behind it the dominant image of competitiveness? The belief that only those jobs that contribute to national competitiveness are somehow valuable. One of the, in addition to then the decline of the Soviet Union, which is what undermined our fears of communism, or at least coupled with this, was the rise of the Japanese. Those of you who weren't born in 1980 or 81 or later, but were born earlier, and maybe significantly earlier, may have some sense of the fears of Japan that emerged during the 1980s. We don't feel them so acutely in the 1990s and into the year 2000 and beyond, where the United States feels itself having recovered relative to Japan. And so you have to go back and read to get a strong, and watch, to get a strong sense of what was going on in the 80s as the U.S. feared the rise of Japan. The Japanese, according to the United States, seemed to be stealing our ideas, seemed to be stealing our technologies, but then turning around and using them to beat us economically. The name Sony, the name Toyota, the name Datsun emerged in the early 1980s as indicators of something fundamental that was happening in Japan. And the Japanese were somehow, they were doing it as a whole national activity. The whole nation state they were all getting together somehow and taking advantage of American ideas in order to produce high quality but inexpensive products that would compete with the United States. And in the United States, we feared that something fundamental was taking place to which we must respond. And so the rise of the Japanese then contributed to our transformation of what constitutes a threat to the United States from a military political threat to an economic one. Note the irony of a country coming to fear another country in which the first country occupies militarily. The United States, since World War II, has occupied Japan militarily. But yet, during the 1980s, there was a sense that Japan was going to overtake and somehow undermine and, in the worst scenarios, destroy the United States. A fundamental shift was taking place in our thinking when we weren't worried about military dimensions, we were worried about economic dimensions.